Suffering is inevitable. You know this already. Life will betray you. People will disappoint you. Your body will fail you. Your plans will collapse. Your heart will break. These aren't possibilities. They're certainties. But here's what separates people who crumble from people who transcend. It's not the presence of suffering. It's the question they ask when suffering arrives. Most people ask, why me? They search for meaning in their pain, for cosmic justice, for some explanation that makes their suffering fair. And in that search, they remain stuck, powerless, waiting for an answer that will never satisfy them. But Nietzsche saw something different. He saw that the question itself is the trap. That, why me, is a question with no useful answer. And he offered a different question. A question that transforms victims into creators. What now? We live in a culture addicted to victimhood. Not because people are weak, but because victimhood offers something seductive. It offers an explanation. It places blame outside yourself. It says you're suffering because of something external, something you couldn't control, something that was done to you. And all of that might be true, but truth doesn't equal usefulness. You can be completely right about who wronged you, who failed you, who betrayed you. You can build an airtight case for why your suffering is unjust. And you can carry that case to your grave, having been right the entire time. But also having changed nothing, built nothing, become nothing beyond the story of what was done to you. That's where this exploration begins. In the moment when suffering arrives and you have a choice. Not a choice about whether to suffer. That's already decided. But a choice about what the suffering means. About what story you tell yourself. About what question you ask. Nietzsche spent his life studying this. Not theoretically. He lived it. Chronic pain, social isolation, professional failure during his lifetime, madness at the end. He knew suffering intimately, and from that intimate knowledge, he developed a philosophy that refuses comfort. That refuses the lies we tell ourselves to make pain easier. He didn't offer you sympathy. He offered you something harder and more valuable. He offered you the challenge to transform suffering from something that happens to you into something you use. His concept was amor fati, love of fate, not acceptance, not resignation. Love, the idea that you take everything that happens, every betrayal, every loss, every failure, and you transform it into fuel. You stop asking why it happened and start asking what you're going to build with it. Because here's the truth Nietzsche understood. The universe doesn't owe you fairness. It doesn't owe you justice. It doesn't owe you an explanation. It just is, and you can spend your life demanding that it be different, demanding that it make sense, demanding that your suffering have meaning. Or you can take your suffering, whatever it is, and forge it into strength, into wisdom, into the very thing that makes you who you are. Let's go deeper. Why is "why me" such a seductive question? Because it promises relief. It says that if you can just understand why this happened, if you can just find the cause, the reason, the cosmic explanation, then you'll feel better. Then the suffering will make sense. Then you'll be able to accept it. But that's a lie. Understanding why doesn't dissolve pain. It just gives you something to do with your mind while the pain continues. And worse, it keeps you oriented backwards. Focused on the past, on what happened, on who's to blame, on justice that may never come. Jung would recognize this as shadow work too. Because often, why me? Is hiding a deeper question. What did I do to deserve this? And underneath that is guilt, shame, the belief that suffering must be punishment for something. That if you're in pain, you must have earned it somehow. This is the shadow of unworthiness speaking. The voice that says you're fundamentally flawed. That your suffering proves you're not good enough, not worthy enough, not deserving of better. And paradoxically, that voice finds comfort in Why me? Because at least it gives the suffering a reason. At least it confirms the narrative you already believed. That you're not enough. I watched someone spend years in this loop. A betrayal happened, a deep one, and they couldn't move past it. Not because the betrayal was particularly unique, but because they were stuck on, why me? They analyzed it endlessly. They replayed conversations. They searched for signs they missed. They built timelines of when things went wrong. They needed to understand why this person chose to hurt them, why they weren't enough to be treated with honesty, why their love wasn't worth protecting. And the more they asked, the deeper they sank. Because why me doesn't have a bottom. You can ask it forever. You can find new angles, new theories, new evidence. But you'll never find an answer that actually helps you move forward. The emotional cost of this pattern is stagnation disguised as processing. You think you're healing because you're feeling your pain, because you're exploring it, because you're trying to understand it. But you're not healing. You're marinating. You're keeping the wound fresh. You're using understanding as a substitute for action. And meanwhile, your life is passing. Opportunities are arriving and leaving. People who could love you are getting tired of competing with your past. Your potential is sitting dormant while you remain fixated on explaining your pain instead of transcending it. There's a mechanism underneath this that Nietzsche saw clearly. Suffering, when given narrative, becomes identity. The story you tell about your pain becomes the story you tell about yourself. You become the person who was betrayed, the person who was abandoned, the person who lost everything. And that identity, as painful as it is, becomes comfortable. It becomes known. It gives you a role to play, a script to follow. It makes you sympathetic. It explains why you haven't achieved what you wanted to achieve, why you haven't become who you wanted to become. The suffering becomes an excuse. Not consciously. You're not deliberately hiding behind it. But unconsciously, it's serving a purpose. It's protecting you from having to risk again, from having to try again, from having to face the possibility that maybe the universe isn't conspiring against you. Maybe it's just indifferent, and in its indifference, it's handing you exactly what you need to become stronger if you're willing to use it. Power begins when you stop asking why and start asking what. What are you going to do with this? What are you going to build from this? What strength is this suffering revealing that you didn't know you had? These questions orient you forward. They take the same pain and transform it from anchor into propulsion, from story into fuel, from identity into raw material. Nietzsche's law is brutal in its simplicity. That which does not kill you makes you stronger. But most people misunderstand this. They think it means suffering automatically creates strength. It doesn't. Suffering creates opportunity for strength. But only if you transform it. Only if you refuse to let it define you as victim and instead use it to forge yourself into something unbreakable. The law isn't passive, it's active. It requires your participation, your choice, your willingness to take what broke you and let it remake you into something harder to break the next time. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche wrote about the three metamorphoses of the spirit. First, the camel, the beast of burden who carries all the weight society puts on it. Who accepts suffering as punishment? Who asks, why me? And finds the answer in their own unworthiness. Second, the lion, the one who says no, who refuses to carry the burden, who fights against fate, who rages at injustice, who demands explanation. And third, the child, the one who says yes to everything, who creates new values, who transforms suffering into play, into art, into fuel for becoming. Most people never make it past the camel. They spend their entire lives carrying weight and asking why it's so heavy. This is the law. Suffering without transformation is just pain. But suffering with transformation becomes initiation. becomes the very thing that separates who you were from who you're capable of being. Think about every story of transformation you know. Every hero's journey, every redemption arc, they all include suffering. Not because suffering is good, but because suffering breaks you open. It destroys the comfortable lies you told yourself. It reveals what you're actually made of. And in that revelation, if you're willing to face it honestly, you find strength you didn't know existed. History is full of people who embodied this. Nelson Mandela, 27 years in prison. He could have spent those years asking, "Why me?" Consumed by rage at injustice, destroyed by bitterness. And he would have been justified. But he didn't. He spent those years asking, "What now?" He read. He studied. He prepared. He transformed his cell into a university. And when he emerged, he wasn't broken. He was forged. The suffering hadn't diminished him. It had refined him, burned away everything that wasn't essential, left only the core of who he was. And that core changed a country. Or Viktor Frankl, Auschwitz, the absolute depths of human suffering. Watching everyone he loved die, facing death daily, and in that hell, he made a choice. He stopped asking why this was happening. He started asking what meaning he could create from it, what he could learn about human nature, about suffering, about survival, about will, and that choice, that shift from, "Why me?" to, "What can I make of this?" gave birth to logotherapy, to an entire school of psychological thought, to a book that's helped millions of people find meaning in their own suffering. The horror didn't go away, but it was transformed from pure destruction into creation, into legacy, into something that outlived the suffering itself. But let's address the resistance here. The moral objection. Isn't this just glorifying suffering? Isn't this victim blaming? If someone tells you to stop asking, "Why me?" when you're in genuine pain, isn't that cruel? Maybe. Or maybe it's the most compassionate thing someone can say. Because, "Why me?" offers temporary comfort but permanent stagnation. It validates your pain but keeps you imprisoned by it. Whereas, "What now?" offers temporary discomfort but permanent liberation. It doesn't deny your pain. It just refuses to let your pain be the end of your story. The distinction is crucial. Nietzsche isn't saying your suffering isn't real. He's not saying you deserved it. He's not saying it's fair. He's saying none of that matters as much as what you do next. He's saying that fairness is a human construct the universe doesn't recognize. That justice is something we create, not something we receive. That waiting for your suffering to make sense is waiting for something that will never come. And in that waiting, you give away your power. You hand control to forces outside yourself. You become the effect instead of the cause. The character in someone else's story instead of the author of your own. Nietzsche's challenge isn't easy. It's not meant to be. It's meant to separate those who use suffering as an excuse from those who use it as fuel. Those who let pain define them from those who let it refine them. Those who remain victims from those who become victors. Not over the person who hurt them, but over their own tendency to be destroyed by circumstance. This is the law. Your suffering is either a tomb or a forge, and you're the one who decides which. So where does this leave you? Right now, with whatever you're carrying. Whatever betrayal, whatever loss, whatever failure sits heavy in your chest. You have a choice in this moment. You've always had it, but maybe you couldn't see it before. You can keep asking why. You can keep searching for the explanation that will make it fair. You can keep waiting for the apology that will never come or the justice that will never arrive. You can keep that wound open, picking at it, examining it, showing it to anyone who'll listen. Or you can close it, not by pretending it didn't happen, but by deciding it's no longer the most important thing about you. Let's do the shadow work here. What is "why me?" protecting you from? Because it is protecting you from something. Maybe from the terror of meaninglessness. The idea that bad things happen for no reason at all. That the universe isn't fair or unfair. It's just indifferent. And if you accept that, if you stop searching for cosmic justice, then you're alone with your pain. No appeal to make, no higher power to petition. Just you and the choice of what to do with what happened. That's terrifying, because it means you're responsible, not for what happened to you, but for what you do with it. And responsibility is heavy. It's easier to remain the victim, to have the story that explains why you're stuck, why you haven't moved forward, why your life isn't what you wanted it to be. Jung would call this confronting the shadow of helplessness, the part of you that's secretly comfortable being powerless. Because powerlessness means you're not responsible. If you're a victim, if things are being done to you, then you don't have to account for your choices. You don't have to face the possibility that maybe you're not stuck because of what happened. Maybe you're stuck because you're choosing to stay there. Choosing the familiar pain of victimhood over the unfamiliar discomfort of agency. That's the shadow, the part that would rather suffer than risk. Would rather be right about how you were wrong than build something new from the wreckage. Nietzsche called this ressentiment, the poison of nursing grievances, of keeping score, of building your identity around what was done to you rather than what you've done with it. He saw it as the opposite of the will to power. The will to power isn't about dominating others. It's about self-overcoming, about using every obstacle, every setback, every betrayal as resistance training, as the very thing that makes you stronger. But ressentiment is the opposite. It's using your suffering as evidence of your specialness, your righteousness, your claim to sympathy, and in doing so, you drain all the transformative potential out of it. You waste the one valuable thing suffering offers, the chance to become someone who can't be broken the same way twice. Every time you rehearse your grievance, you reinforce your victimhood. Every time you replay the betrayal, you give it power over your present. Every time you return to, why me? You choose the past over the future. And I get it. The past is known. The future is uncertain. The past gives you a story. The future demands you write a new one. And writing is harder than reading. Creating is harder than consuming. Becoming is harder than remaining. But remaining is death. Slow death. The death of potential. The death of possibility. The death of whoever you could have become if you'd been willing to transform your suffering into strength instead of identity. The transformation isn't about forgetting what happened. It's not about pretending it didn't hurt. It's about refusing to let it be the last word. About taking the narrative that ends with, and that's why I'm broken, and changing it to, and that's what I survived. From, and that's why I can't, to, and that's what taught me how. From, why me? To, what now? 3 words, 2 syllables. But the difference between those questions is the difference between stagnation and evolution. Between being defined by what happened and being refined by it. Nietzsche lived this philosophy through agony most people can't imagine. Chronic migraines that left him bedridden for days. Digestive issues that made eating torture. Loneliness that came from being too far ahead of his time. Professional rejection. Personal isolation. And at the end, madness. The complete collapse of the very mind that had created such brilliant work. He had every reason to ask, why me? Every justification for bitterness, for rage at the universe, for giving up, but he didn't. He wrote. Even in pain, he wrote. He transformed his suffering into philosophy, into ideas that would outlive him by centuries, into wisdom that would help millions of people he would never meet. His famous phrase, amor fati, wasn't written from comfort. It was written from the depths. Love your fate, not when fate is kind, but especially when it's cruel. Not because cruelty is good, but because hating your fate changes nothing except you. It makes you bitter, resentful, small, but loving your fate, embracing everything that happens as necessary for becoming who you're meant to become. That transforms you. That gives you agency even in circumstances you can't control. You can't choose what happens, but you can choose what it means. And meaning is everything. Think about the last major setback you experienced. The loss, the failure, the betrayal. In the immediate aftermath, you probably asked, "Why me?" You searched for understanding, for explanation, for someone or something to blame. And maybe you found it. Maybe you have a complete understanding of exactly why it happened. Now ask yourself this: did that understanding actually help? Did knowing why make you stronger? Did it move you forward? Or did it just give you a more sophisticated way to remain stuck? Because understanding can be a trap. It can become a substitute for action. You can spend years understanding why you were hurt and never spend a single day deciding what you're going to do about it. Here's what Nietzsche would tell you: the why doesn't matter. Not really. Not in the way you think it does. What matters is what you build from the rubble, what you forge in the fire, what you become in the aftermath. Because suffering, when met with, "What now?" becomes your origin story. Not the story of what happened to you, but the story of how you transformed it. How you took the worst thing that ever happened and used it as the foundation for the best thing you ever built. That's not automatic. That's a choice. A daily, moment-by-moment choice to orient toward the future instead of remaining trapped in the past. I know someone who lost everything. Not metaphorically. Actually everything. Business collapsed. Marriage ended. Health failed. Savings gone. At 50 years old, they were starting from zero. Less than zero. They were in debt financially, emotionally, spiritually. And for about a year, they lived in, "Why me?" They analyzed. They blamed. They justified. They explained to anyone who would listen exactly how they'd been wronged, how the system was rigged, how they'd done everything right and still lost. And they were right about most of it. The deck had been stacked. They had been betrayed. The system was unfair. But being right didn't rebuild anything. It just made them righteous. And righteousness doesn't pay bills or repair relationships or restore health. The turning point came when they shifted the question. Not gradually. Suddenly. One morning they woke up and decided they were done explaining. Done justifying. Done waiting for acknowledgement or apology or justice. They asked, "What now?" And the answer was terrifying. Now, you rebuild. Now, you start over. Now, you take every lesson from the collapse and build something that can't collapse the same way. Now, you become someone who's been through fire and can guide others through it. Now, you transform your greatest failure into your most valuable credential. Not by denying it happened, but by using it as proof that you can survive anything. 5 years later, they'd built something new. Not just a business, a life, a philosophy, a presence. And the collapse? It wasn't their secret shame anymore. It was their proof of concept. Their evidence that transformation is possible. Their credential for helping others who were going through their own collapse. The suffering hadn't disappeared from their story. It had been integrated, transformed from the ending into the middle, from the climax into the inciting incident, from "Why me?" into "This is what taught me everything I needed to know." That's Nietzsche's challenge in action. Not in theory, in practice, in an actual life, taking actual suffering and refusing to let it be waste. Refusing to let it be just pain. Instead, consciously, deliberately, sometimes desperately, transforming it into fuel. Into wisdom. Into the very thing that gives your life depth and meaning and power. Because here's what Nietzsche understood that most people miss. A life without suffering is a life without growth. without character, without the kind of depth that comes only from having survived something that should have destroyed you. Comfort creates nothing. Struggle creates everything. Not the struggle itself, but your response to it. Your willingness to ask, what now? Instead of, why me? The rebirth isn't about becoming someone who doesn't hurt. It's about becoming someone who uses hurt as raw material, who sees suffering not as punishment but as information, as feedback, as the universe's way of showing you where you need to grow, what you need to strengthen, who you need to become. And from that perspective, from that shift in question, everything changes. The same events, the same betrayals, the same losses, but completely different meaning, completely different outcome, because you're not the passive recipient of fate anymore. You're the active transformer of it. You're not the victim. You're the alchemist, taking lead and turning it into gold, taking suffering and turning it into strength. Let's make this practical. Let's bring Nietzsche's challenge into your actual life, starting now. Here's the practice. The next time something painful happens, and it will, catch yourself before you spiral into, why me? Notice the urge, the pull toward explanation, toward blame, toward making sense of senseless pain. And instead of following that urge, pause. Take a breath, and ask a different question. What now? Not what does this mean? Not why did this happen? Not who's to blame. Just what now? What am I going to do with this? What am I going to build from this? What strength is this revealing that I didn't know I had? Second practice. Rewrite your narrative. Take your biggest wound, the one you return to, the one you use to explain why you are the way you are. The betrayal or the loss or the failure that you've turned into your origin story. And rewrite it, not by denying what happened, but by changing where the story ends. Right now, it probably ends with the pain, with what was done to you, with why you're justified in being stuck. Change the ending. Make the pain the middle. Make what now? The turning point, and make what you built from the rubble the climax. Turn your victim story into your hero story, not by minimizing what happened, but by maximizing what you did with it. Third practice. Let go of justice. This is the hardest one. Stop waiting for the apology that will never come, for the acknowledgement that you were wronged, for the universe to balance the scales. It won't. Life isn't fair. It never promised to be. And every day you spend waiting for fairness is a day you're not spending building something new. Justice might come. It might not. But either way, you don't need it to move forward. You don't need the person who hurt you to validate your pain. You don't need the universe to make sense. You just need to decide that you're done letting circumstances you can't control determine outcomes you can. Here's the core law of Nietzsche's philosophy, distilled into one sentence. Life happens for you, not to you, but only if you choose to use it that way. The same event can destroy one person and forge another, not because one is stronger, but because one asks a better question. Why me? Keeps you stuck in the past, analyzing what happened. What now? Propels you into the future, creating what happens next. The difference between those questions is the difference between being shaped by your circumstances and shaping them. Between being the character and being the author. Nietzsche's wisdom isn't comfortable. It doesn't offer you sympathy. It doesn't validate your pain by giving it cosmic meaning. It does something harder. It tells you that your pain is your responsibility, not the pain itself. You didn't choose that, but what you do with it, that's entirely yours. And that responsibility is both crushing and liberating. Crushing because it means you can't hide behind victimhood anymore. Liberating because it means you have power. Real power. The power to transform anything into fuel. To use any obstacle as a stepping stone. To make your suffering the very thing that makes you unbreakable. Think about who you want to be 5 years from now. 10 years from now. At the end of your life, do you want to be someone who spent all that time explaining why things didn't work out? Cataloging every wrong done to you? Building an airtight case for why you're justified in not becoming who you could have become? Or do you want to be someone who took every setback and used it? Who transformed every wound into wisdom? Who looked at suffering not as the end of their story but as the beginning of their strength? Because that choice is available right now. Not later. Not when things get better. Not when you finally get the closure you're waiting for. Now, with exactly what you have. With exactly what's happened. With exactly where you are. The world will keep throwing suffering at you. That's not pessimism. That's reality. People will betray you. Plans will fail. Bodies will age. Losses will accumulate. And every single time, you'll face the same choice. Why me? Or, what now? One question keeps you stuck. The other sets you free. One makes you a victim. The other makes you a creator. One lets suffering win. The other transforms suffering into the very foundation of your strength. If this resonates with you, if you feel that pull toward agency over victimhood, toward creation over complaint, toward transformation over explanation, then stay. Subscribe, because we're exploring more of these challenges. More of Nietzsche's wisdom, Jung's depth, Machiavelli's strategy. More of the timeless philosophy that refuses to comfort you and instead challenges you to become someone who doesn't need comfort. Someone who's been through hell and used it to forge themselves into something unbreakable. Someone who stopped asking, why me? And started building their answer to, what now? The suffering you're carrying right now, whatever it is, has only two possible futures. Either it destroys you, slowly, quietly, from the inside out. Or it forges you into someone stronger, wiser, deeper than you were before it happened. The suffering itself doesn't determine which. Your question does. Your choice does. Your willingness to stop rehearsing your pain and start transforming it does. And that choice is available in this moment. Not when you feel ready. Not when you've fully healed. Not when the pain has lessened. Now, exactly as you are, exactly as it is. Nietzsche spent his final years in madness. Unable to speak coherently. Unable to recognize himself. All that brilliant thought, all that powerful philosophy, locked away in a mind that had broken. He didn't get a triumphant ending. He didn't get justice. He didn't get to see his ideas transform the world. He just got suffering, and then death. But his work outlived him. His ideas reached millions. His challenge to ask, what now? Instead of, why me? Has transformed countless lives. Because he didn't wait for fair circumstances to do meaningful work. He did meaningful work despite unfair circumstances. He didn't let his suffering be waste. He transformed it into legacy, into philosophy that still echoes more than a century after his death. You have that same choice. Not on Nietzsche's scale, maybe, but on your scale, in your life, with your suffering. You can let it be waste. Just pain that happened and left you diminished. Or you can use it. Transform it. Let it forge you into someone who knows, deep in their bones, that they can survive anything. That they can take the worst and build something from it. That they're not fragile. They're not helpless. They're not at the mercy of circumstances. They're the alchemist, the transformer, the one who takes, why me? And turns it into, watch what I build from this. Stop asking, why me? Start asking, what now? And then answer that question with your life. With your choices. With your refusal to let suffering have the last word. The universe doesn't owe you fairness. But you owe yourself transformation. You owe yourself the chance to become someone who's been through fire and emerged as steel. Someone who looked at their suffering and said, this doesn't get to define me. I get to define it. And I define it as the beginning of my strength, not the end of my story. That's Nietzsche's challenge. That's the path. Not away from suffering, but through it. Not around pain, but into transformation. Not, why me? But, what now? And in that question, in that shift, in that choice, you find something most people never find. You find power. Real power. Not over your circumstances, but over your response to them. And that response, that choice to transform instead of remaining victim, is the only power that actually matters. The only power that can never be taken from you. The only power that makes you unbreakable. What now? That's up to you. But whatever you choose, choose consciously. Choose powerfully. Choose transformation over explanation. And watch what happens when you stop asking why and start building anyway.